Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday wake-up class on the art of the CMA, preparing, presenting, and winning. I'll close that down and go to control from my iPad here. And there we go. All right. Welcome, everybody. The art of the CMA. Obviously, you do CMAs mainly when you're doing listings, although you do also get involved doing CMAs for buyer clients when you sort of hone in on that one property that you're thinking about making an offer on. So you will do CMAs for buyers. Today, though, we're going to really focus on working with this, winning the listing and serving our seller clients. As usual with Peak Producer training here, we talk about habits, attitudes, and skills. Our classes focus on skills and tools, providing you with those elements of things you can add to your arsenal, your toolkit, whatever. But we also try to help you out with habits, making the best use of your time, those disciplines that go into being effective and efficient in our work here. Since we are our own bosses, we also have to remember we're our own employees. Lives up to our expectations as the owner of the company. All these things, of course, tie together with attitudes. Having a great positive attitude, thinking of affirmations and things will help you in your business, help you want to acquire more skills, help you implement those habits. And then the more you have better skills and habits, the better your attitude will go. So it all fits together. Habits, attitudes, and skills. Remember, we'd rather be has than has not or has been. So think in terms of has with everything we do. So the CMA, preparing and winning, the comparative market analysis. The key is using these as a tool in your arsenal to help you win the listing and serve every client, every seller satisfactorily. And price has huge impact on how successfully you're going to be able to serve that client. If you stop and think about it, you price a house wrong, you're probably going to be in for some trouble. So I will say right up front, this comes right from Peak Producers. The best marketing plan for any house is pricing it right. Pricing the home right is the best marketing plan you can have, especially this time of the year. Spring and summer when the market is very active, probably even more so in the winter and the fall when it's not that active. So anyway, the key to winning and serving a listing is our ability to meet the emotional needs of the client. Stop and think about that. Selling a home is usually something that's very emotional for people. Maybe they built it 25 years ago and have been the only owners. And they've done lots of upgrades. They've raised their family there. Maybe it's their first home, their starter home, and they've had several promotions, they paid off their student loans, and now they're going to be able to sell that house and move into a really classy house in a great neighborhood. And yet that was their first home they lived in. They had their first baby there. So emotional. The key is to make our clients feel like they've been heard. Boy, oh boy. We do that by asking lots of questions. I talk a lot about leading with questions. We've got lots of training on that. We've got lots of templates that have got questions for you to ask. That allows us to understand what their goals and motivations are, and it makes, anytime you meet with somebody and you talk with them, you ask them questions, it usually makes them feel pretty good. You're interested in them. That's what we want our clients to feel, our potential clients here. And the bottom line is you want to make them feel that you can do something to relieve any frustration and anxiety. They may have had friends who've sold houses in the last 3 or 4 months or whatever who had a terrible time and it was very frustrating. You want to show them that what we can do for them will help meet their emotional needs and help them overcome the frustration, anxiety, and the stress of selling a house. Remember, a seller is somebody who's willing to go through the stress of selling a house at a reasonable price in order to achieve a goal. So I always love to talk about our 7-step blueprint for getting a home sold, which I really call our 7-step blueprint for winning the listing. We talk about this a lot, the 7-step blueprint. If you've not incorporated this when you've had a chance for a listing, I really encourage you to do it as one of the first things you do when you sit down and meet with the people, especially if you're in a competitive situation. So the 7 steps are, and I'm going to go through them briefly here today, since we do this a lot, in-depth market analysis, but we do this last. Now, I put together these 7 steps on a nice piece of glossy paper with the BHHS Indiana logo at the bottom, and I hand it to the people so they can see it. Obviously, I don't put these parenthetical comments in there. These are for us and for our training. But I do give them this list with that number one, and then I do tell them, this is probably the most important thing to most people. You want to know how much you can get for your house. I know how crucial it is, and I know that's the most important thing, so I'm going to address it now, and we're going to cover it in detail last, because I want to make sure you've got the full context of what I'm going to do for you, everything that leads into how we price the house, how we're going to achieve that price for you folks. So I want to cover all of that first. I want to make sure that you know that I understand how important that is to you, so I mentioned it first. Then number two, one of the things I'm going to do for you is put together a property enhancement checklist for you. I love that term, enhancement. We used to realtors used to refer to that as, we got to fix this up or replace that shag carpet. Actually, shag carpets kind of come back. Anyway, it's a property enhancement checklist. Boy, talk about a great euphemistic term to use. I personally, at a certain price point and a certain motivation level, will offer to pay for a stager and a professional photographer, somebody to come in and along with me to walk through the house to not only point out things that might need to be fixed or repaired. I mean, I can do that. Most of us in the business, after a while, learn the things that we can point out that need to be repaired and fixed up and whatever that might be. A stager takes it to that next level of making the house evoke or look like a model home. That's the goal, is to have your house, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, look as much like a model home. And you all know model homes don't have a whole lot of furniture. They don't have a lot of pictures of the kids and things like that. So I'm going to pay for a stager to come in because I know that's going to make, number one, the photographs look a lot better. And number two, when the buyers actually walk through, it's going to be a lot more attractive to them. And it's worth it to me. And I'm that confident in my abilities here that I'm willing to spend that money up front for you folks. And then a professional photographer. Oftentimes we see, it's laughable, the joke photographs we see sometimes from people in expensive homes. Why in the world a realtor would take pictures with, it looks like their iPhone or something like that. It's just horrible. Use a professional photographer. You can do that for $125, $150. We've got a thing now that we are in the process of finalizing agreement with a company that's going to use these Matterport cameras that do the 3D photographs and the dollhouse things. I think it's $160 for a house. So that's an incredible bargain. Obviously, you're not going to do that for a bottom of the market or a distressed sale or something like that, but talk about setting yourself apart. And I'm going to pay for that for you, because the key is that 92, or actually I think it's 94% of buyers start their search for houses online. What do they look at online when they go on to look at houses? Do they look at the great text that I wrote, the description, the beautiful words? Because I'm a writer and I can write really good words. No, they look at the pictures. They might read my description later on if they like the pictures, but they look at the pictures. So why would you not make sure the pictures are the best they can possibly be? So that's a professional, and it's using a stager, because we want to get people in your house. Number three, a comprehensive marketing and promotion plan. This is what most sellers, if you ask them, what would you like to hear about today, and make sure that I explain to you and clarify for you what I do for you, they're going to say, I'd like to hear about your marketing plan, because that's most realtors talk about that. And I think it's a mistake, frankly, because these days we all syndicate our listings out to the same places, Zillow and Trulia. And, oh gosh, I just realized that one of our major competitors, FC Tucker, I won't name them, but they no longer syndicate their listings to Zillow and Trulia, because they're having a little corporate war between themselves and Zillow and Trulia. If you've seen their billboards lately, they say, come to our website and you can find 100% of the houses. Well, if I live in Topeka, Kansas, or Toledo, Ohio, or Poughkeepsie, New York, and I'm thinking about moving to Indianapolis, do you think I'm going to look at Tucker's website? No, I'm going to look at Zillow or Trulia or Realtor.com. Or if I see signs all over my neighborhood for Berkshire Hathaway, I might go to the Berkshire Hathaway website and try to find homes. So use this to your advantage when you're in a competitive situation. If you know you're competing against Tucker, even if you don't know you're competing against them, mention the fact that, listen, we all, for the most part, syndicate our listings out to the same places, and 94% of the people start their search there, and that's why I'm going to focus so much on that. And by the way, be aware that one of our major competitors in the market here does not syndicate to those two top ones, which account for about 50% of the people who start searching a real estate go to those two houses, or those two websites. So which do you think is a more comprehensive marketing plan? Number 4, crystal clear, proactive communication. This is where we begin to really differentiate ourselves. We realtors, unfortunately, have a less than stellar reputation for being good communicators. And one of the things that I do in my presentations, and I encourage you to do too, is talk about this right up front. That, yeah, in surveys you may have seen, or you may have talked to friends who said, yeah, our realtor disappeared after he got the listing. We never heard from him or whatever. It happens all the time. And I've been guilty of it myself too. I'm going to make sure that I update you weekly. What would you like? Would you like a phone call? Would you like an email? Would you like a text? I'm going to let you know if nothing is going on in the market in your neighborhood. And if something stellar happens, I'll call you right away. But I'm going to make sure that I keep in touch with you. And you know that I'm working for you every day of every week. Number 5, negotiating and structuring the sale. This is where no other realtors say a word about this kind of thing. The bottom line is, I love to say, this is where I put money in your pocket. Negotiating and structuring the sale. Now, if you've been in the business for a good while, you can talk about that. I've negotiated $8 billion worth of real estate, and obviously you may compete against some people who say they've sold $8 billion worth of real estate, but I guarantee you, none of them ever really dig in and say, so I have great skills at negotiating, and this is where I put money in your pocket. They don't go there. They just say, well, I've sold $8 million worth of real estate, so that means I'm a really good person. Well, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I love this phrase, this is where I put money in your pocket. For you newer agents, this is where you can say that I've had all kinds of great training on negotiation. I've, in fact, been trained on the 7 different types of negotiation style so that I can optimize. I can quickly identify what the style of the other side is. And so I can not be fighting against that, but working with that style to get the best results for you folks. Number 6, comprehensive transaction management. So often our clients, and frankly, a lot of us realtors, once we get that contract signed and accepted purchase agreement, we sort of think, whew, I can go on to the next deal or knock on more doors and try to find more clients. That's great. I want to make sure that you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, understand that there's many a slip between the cup and the lip, and there actually are 3 stages in negotiation. We talked about this recently in one of our presentations. First of all, there's the purchase agreement where we settle on the price, the timing, the financing, and any other details. But then when you have the inspection come through, there's probably going to be another round of negotiation because inspections are not cut and dried. There's a lot of gray area. We just did a training session on inspections last week, I think it was. So, and then the third level of time of negotiations is when the appraisal comes in. We may be negotiating again if the appraisal comes in under the purchase price. So comprehensive transaction management and my proactive weekly communications with you folks are going to be crucial to that relieving your stress, letting you know that I've got your best interest in mind. I've not just run off to the next deal once we get the purchase agreement signed. And then number 7, I want to make sure that you know that I have a long-term approach to this business and build relationships. That's why I've been successful in this business. And you will be a part of my client appreciation program. And for us, basically that sets the foundation for building that long-term real estate advisor relationship where we keep in touch regularly. We thank them for the business. We ask them if there's anything we can do to help them with their home, with their property taxes, with anything like that. And then we ask them for referrals. And that's how we build our business going forward. So the 7-Step Blueprint, it's a fabulous tool, and it's a great way to open your discussion, which leads then into the CMA. So let's talk about pricing strategies for a second. One of the best things to keep in mind to do is ask the seller what they think it's worth. That first phone call, hey, This is Joe Banana. I just saw your sign down the street there that you sold Joe and Lucy's home. We're thinking about selling. Oh, good. You get the basics. And so, do you have an idea what you think your home is worth? And they'll probably tell you when you ask it sort of conversationally like that. They may say, "Oh, we think it's a lot better than John and Sally's house. They sold theirs for $250, and we put in new carpet 3 years ago, and put in new faucets 4 years ago. So theirs was $250. We think we should sell ours for $350." And so that's going to give you a real quick picture of, okay, I know what I'm dealing with here. So ask them what they think it's worth when you go out to meet with them. Ask them what they think it's worth when you get into talking about the price. So what do you guys think it's worth? Ideally, people, smart people may say, "Oh, we have some idea, but you're the expert. We'd like to hear your thoughts first." That's a smart move on a seller's part. So the pricing strategies above the market to test it. So if somebody says, "Yeah, we just like, the market's really hot. We think we'd like to put our house on the market, see if we could get, 30% over what a neighbor's house has been selling for." Okay, that tells you something really good. Jane, I know you have used, Jane Funky has used an approach in her pricing with people that has sort of 3 different tranches to it. Do you like the way I use that word tranche? There's a stretch price as opposed to a test price. But the stretch price, Jane, is still within the market range. It's not outside the market, but you term it the stretch, in other words, right at the top of the market. And then there's the in the market, right in the middle of the market, which would be the most competitive. And the goal of in the market is to attract reasonable offers. And do so fairly quickly. Again, there's that graph between time and price that the longer it's on the market, the lower the price typically ends up being. So if we price it right to start with, the chances are you'll sell it faster and get a better price. So, and then 3, somebody who's highly motivated, looking maybe willing to price it at the bottom of that range, some level of distress. Distress typically, we think of that, it means a foreclosure, a short sale, or something, a legal situation like that. In this case, I'm not meaning that. I'm meaning some personal or familial distress. Somebody's lost their job. They've got 6 months severance pay. They've got plenty of money saved up. Their kids have moved out. They need to sell their house and downsize, and now's the time to do it. There's a little bit of distress there, so they might like to move along so that they end up not having to still be paying this big mortgage on the 6-bedroom palace, beyond 6 months. So look at what's the distress. Somebody may have just been diagnosed with a physical ailment that's going to change their lives. So the key is to find out what is the seller's motivation. Obviously, motivating factors for sellers are price is huge, but there's also other ones. What's the timing? The classic one for that is, and that's one of the reasons why spring and summer are so busy, we want to get Johnny and Sally into the Carmel Clay schools, or we want to move to Newburgh before school starts. Whatever it might be, what's the timing? And here's where it's great. When you ask the people what their timing is, Buffini and Peak Producers recommends carry one of those big, 12-month calendars with you. It's the size of a tabletop almost, or something like that. Lay it out there and say, okay, you want to get Johnny and Sally in school. When does school start? Is it August 15th? Yes, August 15th. That's great. Super. Probably want to move in by August 1 then, to have a couple weeks. So August 1, 45 days back from that, July 1, June 15. That means we have to have a house completely under contract by June 15th at the latest. We ought to aim for June 1st. You probably want to look at some houses. So 45 days for houses, June 1st, May 15th. We should be starting to look for houses and get your house on the market at the same time, May 15th. Gosh, it's May 30th right now. I think we better get in motion. Most of the time you'll find you will surprise people with what the timing is. And when you're able to do that with them, showing that, marking it on the calendar, sort of working backwards from when they want to be in, that will help you with that graph between price and time. Okay, you want to be in by, have Johnny and Sally in school, we need to put this on at a good price. What family considerations? Again, I talk about the school things. we want to move near our son-in-law and our daughter. They just had their first baby, and we want to move from Greenwood here to the north side. They live in Noblesville. So, that kind of thing. Lifestyle insecurities. We're in security. Our kids, we're empty nesters now. We don't need this 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom home right now. And we really love the idea of moving to, downtown, to be, walking distance of all the shops and the art galleries and things like that. And security. This neighborhood has gone down a little bit. We think it's time to move, et cetera, whatever it might be. Find out what their motivations are, and that will then help you as you approach this. So, digging further down now into the CMA itself, what are the elements of a comparable? First of all, there's the physical attributes. Pretty basic stuff. Number of bedrooms, is there a basement, is there a fireplace, 2-car garage, et cetera, what's the lot size, all that kind of thing. That's number one. Number two, what's the size of the house, the overall gross square footage of the house. And remember, for our purposes, we typically compare per square foot prices based only on the main and upper, not including basement, even if the basement is finished. Finished basement adds value, but it doesn't add to or substantiate the per square foot price the same as the main and upper level. So what's the size? What's the age? What's the location? And by location, we really mean the micro location. Fishers is a macro location. Carmel's a macro location. Eden Estates is a more micro location, but within Eden Estates, or even within a tract home development, what's the micro location? Is it on a corner? Does it back up to a fence? What's the house behind it look like? Et cetera, et cetera. The micro location becomes more and more crucial. And then, of course, number 4, the condition. The problem with Zillow and Trulia, and this is why our competitor has decided to no longer syndicate to them, they have these estimates, and these estimates that can sometimes get us in trouble. However, I think the word is out there so much that even the most uninitiated potential seller or buyer recognizes that Zillow and Trulia have problems with their estimates. And all we need to do is show them an example. Here's the house that sold down the street last week. It sold for $250. Here's this estimate for $395. Which would you, the fact or the bubble gum? Which would you prefer? Now, Tucker has chosen to no longer do that because what they're telling their clients is that it creates such a problem for you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller and buyer, that we don't want you to have to deal with that. Which is another way of saying that I, as a professional, don't want to deal with that, and I'm incapable of dealing with that. That's what that's saying. So anyway, we need to explain this to people. The problem is that Zillow and Trulia only focus on that first element, 4 bedrooms, da-da-da. Maybe they focus on the second, the size and the age. Probably some of their algorithms do include those as well. But the issue really boils down to this. It's information that Zillow and Trulia and computers have versus knowledge. Sometimes some of our agents talk in terms of, with CMAs, it's as much an art as it is a science. But it's the same thing as this, information versus knowledge. No computer algorithm has the knowledge. Only we human beings can bring that personal knowledge, walking, looking, touching, and smelling the properties. And that's why it's so crucial to get out there and, for you newer agents, preview homes. That should be part of your weekly activities, previewing 3, 4, 5 homes in areas where you plan to be working and hope to focus on your business. Preview those homes so that when you do have that chance to meet with somebody, you can say, oh, yeah, just last week I was in that house down the street. Da-da-da. You don't need to say I was previewing it because I knew. It sounds like, oh, I was showing houses down there. Okay, so finding the comps. Remember, comp means comparable, which ideally means as close as possible to identical. Pretty basic definition, but that's what it means, as close as possible to identical. Obviously, tract and subdivision homes are the easiest because most of them are built about the same within a period of 5 or 6 years, or maybe 10 years at the most if it's a large subdivision. There's fairly few layouts, a similar size and age, et cetera, et cetera. So this means that in tract homes, it's going to be easier, and there's probably going to be more comps potentially. But that's why then location and condition become even more crucial with those, because that's going to really be what differentiates those. And that's why it's important to get those eyes and ears and your nose out there on the site and walk around them. So let's talk a little bit about where what kind of comps we look to use. This is pretty basic stuff. Number one, those houses that are active in the market. Number two, those that are under contract. And I didn't use the word pending there because they may be pending, they may be under contract with a contingency, first right contingency, or under contingency on financing or inspections or something like that. So make sure you have all those when you're looking for houses for comps, to put active and active with contingencies in there. Don't miss those, because there's a lot of these. More and more these days I'm seeing houses listed as active with contingency versus pending. Number three, those sold in as short a time as possible. By as short as time as possible, I mean not houses that sell fast, although that's good, but houses that have sold in the neighborhood that meet the other criteria within as short of a span as possible. So if you can find 3 sold comps that have sold in the last 2 months, that's great. Those are your comps, if they meet all the other things. If you can't find any that are that close, that haven't sold in 5 months, have only sold within 5 months, then you use those. So, but if you've got some that have sold the shortest time, and that the days on the market doesn't matter for this. We're looking at get the most recent sales that you can use. That would be the better way to put it. Sold most recently. If you have to get beyond 6 months, then the validity of your comps are starting to wane. And instead of going back further in that subdivision, maybe you look at neighboring subdivisions. You broaden the area a little bit potentially to get homes that have sold more recently, because, as realtors, we all know, the times they are changing with the seasons and the prices and the days on the market and everything changed. So number 4, expired and withdrawn. Don't forget to pull up and take a look at those and show those to your clients, because these are the houses that didn't sell. Look at this one. It didn't sell. It's priced $50,000 more than the competition. It was on the market for a year and didn't sell, and they never lowered the price. Is that what you're looking to do? So look at those, include all those. So again, finding the comps, what are the details we look at when we've got those individual houses, and then we put them together into a CMA average price. It's a very helpful tool for us there. Okay, what's the average price for these houses that are currently on the market? What's the average price for those that are under contract, those that have sold in the last, ideally 2 or 3 months or something like that, depending on the time of the year? What's the average price? Then what's the average days on the market? Whoa, this is a great neighborhood. The average days on the market for the ones that are under contract or sold has been 27 days. Wow, that's great. And the average days on the market for those 3 that I'm showing you that are on the market right now is 17 days. Wow, so we don't have any outliers. Now, if you do have an outlier that's been on the market for 179 days, mention that and have that information. Don't include it in your CMA, but mention, hey, we've got one house in the neighborhood that's been on the market for nearly 6 months, and here's why. So you talk about that one, even though it has not yet expired or withdrawn. So make sure you're aware of those. Days on the market, sold price to list price ratio. That is a huge factor to consider, especially in tract home subdivisions, because that's the other side. The buyers are going to be looking at exactly these same stats. And if they're working with a professional, which hopefully they are, that professional hopefully has had as good a training as you folks get and knows to look at that price ratio of sale price to list price. If that is above 95%, that means it's a pretty strong neighborhood and a pretty strong market. These days, we're seeing things 96, 97, even 98% on sold comps, especially in prices that are very attractive, and we're getting multiple offers. The general average would probably be about 95% average ratio of sale to list price. And then the price per square foot. My commercial background, price per square foot, and return on investment and cash flow, all those kinds of things were always the basis. You looked at only that. You didn't really compare it to an average price or days on the market or anything like that very much. You always use that. That has become more and more over the last several years a popular thing to use in the residential side of the business. What's the price per square foot? I always look at that as sort of the test for evaluations. Okay, here's the average price, here's the days on the market, here's what we think your house fits in with these, and if we price it at this based on these, that gives you an average price per square foot of $103 a square foot. Those that have sold for an average price of $89 a square foot. We need to take another look here, at how we're pricing your house. I look at it sort of as a check and balance. So Obviously, if it's not in a tract, it's going to be tougher to comp, and that's where for you newer agents, even for agents who've been in the business, I've got an opportunity to do a listing presentation on a neighborhood in Carmel where I've never sold anything. I know the area, but I'm going to be talking to some people about that neighborhood to get some better ideas about it so that I have a better idea, because all the homes are custom and unique, and prices vary widely from $200,000 to $1,000,000. So I've got to get some help on that. So don't hesitate to ask for help. So going on with basically whether it's a non-tract home, but especially a tract type subdivision home, where we talk about the location and condition are such huge factors. Condition adjustments are what you're going to have to really look at. You know, what are the finishes and updates, and know that new carpet that you put in 3 years ago doesn't add $25,000 in value to your house. Sorry. So, you know, what have they done? That's one of the first questions you'd ask. You bought this house 7 years ago. You paid this much for it. What kind of updates and repairs have you done, et cetera, et cetera? And no, repairs don't add value. Replacing the air conditioning system that failed 7 years ago doesn't add value. It adds a little bit of value, but it's not like an upgrade. That just makes the person more apt to pay a reasonable price for it. So again, lot configuration, we talked about that. Is it a corner lot? You know, can you see Walmart? Can you smell the paper mill? I don't know whether we have paper mills in Indiana. On the East Coast, we had paper mills, and boy, oh boy, did they stink. You know, what's the street and the traffic noise? Those can be more and more important considerations. Is it on a lovely pond with a steep hill leading down to it? And are there buyers who might have toddlers for whom that might be a concern? I don't know. You know, that's a plus and a minus. So can you walk to Starbucks? So all the adjustments that you need to make based on the finishes and updates and the lot configuration, those will enter into as you think about it and as you work through with the seller how to price the house. Now again, this works beautifully in using that two-step listing presentation where you go out and you meet with somebody. Maybe you send them our listing presentation. I'm going to get into that in a minute briefly in advance by email so they can take a look at all of our capabilities and all that stuff in a beautiful presentation. You walk out and then you go and you look at their house, especially with a custom house or unique house versus a subdivision house. But even with a subdivision house where most of the houses are similar, this is great because it's only then by looking at the house, by walking around it, by smelling it, oh my gosh, the guy's a cigar smoker. I think that's really cool, but the house stinks. I'm sorry. So you won't know that unless you get out there and walk around. And of course, you won't know that about the comps unless you get out and walk around the comps as well. So, but the two-step, you go out, you walk around the house, you take pictures, you know, give them some initial feedback, and then you say, that's great, let's meet again in 2 days, and I'll bring my, we'll go through the listing presentation, and then we'll go through my 7-step blueprint with you, and we'll help you set a price and make a choice on which realtor you want to use. So the two-step works beautifully to get this kind of stuff, because if you do a one-step and you put together based on what you think the house might be like, and you get out there and the guy's been smoking Havana cigars, again, I think he's really cool, but that doesn't help you sell their house. You can't know that without going out and looking at the house and smelling the house. So as you get in, digging deeper now into chatting, having that discussion with the seller, one of the things I like to talk about to lead with is how will buyers view the house? You know, the stager, when the stager comes out, the stager will say, I'm going to look at this house the way a buyer will. And that means I'm going to be very critical of it because buyers expect things to be perfect, especially in this price range or whatever it might be, blah, 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 you know, and especially if the house is obviously trying to compete against houses that are in good condition and priced well. So how will buyers view the house? It doesn't matter, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm sorry to say this, what you think the value is, it's how the buyers are going to, because unless you want to buy the house from yourself at your price, then you're going to have to have someone buy the house from you at a price that's dictated by the market. I use the phrase, the buyers and the market, and I like to say the market will show us. The market will show us. I think I'm comfortable with this price. I think this makes good sense. Remember, buyers have access to the same data that we just looked at here. And again, if the seller is continuing to say, well, I think it should be $30,000 higher than what the market would say, the question to ask them is, so what is it that, you know, you're an engineer or you're an attorney or you're a whatever you do or you're a teacher or whatever, what makes you, what am I missing that you know or see that makes you feel that the market would agree that $30,000 higher would be the right price? And most of the time, people don't have an answer other than, well, it's just my gut feeling. Okay, and if somebody's going to be that way, maybe you don't take the listing, especially if it's somebody that you're not making a connection with, and they're kind of, obnoxious or whatever. When you've got a good, steady business built on referrals and consistent business, you can say, I'm not sure this is a match. I know you've talked with a couple of other agents, so tell you what, thank you so much for your time. But, and you can decline to work with somebody. So one of the great things about negotiating is always be prepared to walk away. I've done that and had somebody say, whoa, 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 whoa. Well, no, we really like, I think we'll agree to your price. And then maybe you take it or maybe you don't take it. So, but having the ability and the position to walk away is important. But the keys are the market, the market, the market. The market, the market, the market, which is data and information driven. Yes, buyers make some emotional decisions. Somebody might pay over market in today's market in many locations because we're getting multiple offers and things. But bottom line, in a general sense, the market has to be the guide for what the price to set the house at and what it will sell for. So be alert to timing and signals in the market and be aware so that you can tell people, well, this house was on the market for 3 weeks and sold, and here's why, they lowered the price, et cetera, et cetera. So be aware of all that stuff when you're talking to these people as you fine-tune getting to, agreeing on a price. So then you come to the payoff, setting the price. So I always encourage agents, don't tell them the price, so we should sell it for $250. Give them a range. I think as we look at this house can probably sell for $240 to $255 or $240 to $250, whatever it might be, and therefore we could probably set the price at $259, $255, whatever it might be, based on the stats that you've gone through with them in detail. Give them a range, and then shut your mouth. Count until they say something. Because remember, the first to speak usually loses. So this could be a tough one sometime, depending on the kind of person you're dealing with. The ideal answer from somebody, a potential buyer or seller, is, that all sounds great. What do you recommend? Wow, you love it. Well, in that case, I recommend $259.9. Et cetera, et cetera. Now, it's ideal if they've given you a price range and it turned out it was $260 to $265 and you sort of hone in on $259 and they agree with that. That's wonderful. That's a win all the way around. So the first one to speak usually loses. So let them speak first, and if they don't, then fill in a number and say, does that sound good to you folks? Okay, let's go. Let's get it signed. So something to think about, as I was just talking about with regard to being prepared to walk away. There's a thing that we call the listing agent love-o-meter, especially if you've had a competitive situation and you've won against 2 or 3 other agents who are potentially very, very good and skilled and nice people. That says a lot, and you can set your love-o-meter from your client at a pretty high level. They really love me. That's up here. But as time goes by, and each week that goes by with not many showings or no offers, the love-o-meter begins to deflate and go down. And so at some point in time, the key with our business is to get the house sold before the love-o-meter crosses the hate line, the disrespect line. So if you've got that situation that I just was talking about, where somebody's saying, no, I really want to list at $30,000 higher than what the market and all the stats you told me and what your professional advice is, just because I think, we put in that new carpet and we really love this house. Well, I'd rather disappoint you now than later, because I think the price really needs to be this, and I don't think you'll be able to sell the house. So, I'd rather disappoint you now than later. And you explain this whole situation to them. The longer a house stays on the market, the lower the probability of selling it and the lower the price when it eventually does sell. So be aware of that listing agent love-o-meter and keep that in mind. So I'm going to talk just briefly here. We've had some other sessions getting into more detail on Toolkit CMA, but for those of you, if you've not dug into Toolkit CMA, this is a great tool, very professional tool for presenting and winning the listing. It's available. Toolkit CMA is on our dashboard at the BHHS Resource Center. When you go into your dashboard, it's one of those quick links. You can just click to it. If you're a newer agent or you've not used it, or an older agent and you haven't used it for a good while and you've forgotten your password, give Michael Albrecht, shoot Michael Albrecht an email, or perhaps your manager can get your login information for you. But get in, look at it, set it up, and give it a try and see what it works. It's beautiful because the first thing you do is you go and you set up your preferences and your profile so that it's all done. You put your photograph in there, you edit your agent profile. It'd probably be the same thing you'd want to have on your website and this kind of thing. And then you can do all kinds of additional things there. But first of all, set up your profile, because it's going to pull from your profile into anything you do. So step 2, select a presentation to customize, and you can go in here and you can check out the demonstration, the demos here, and you'll want to select presentations. There's a couple of great ones. There's a listing presentation, which is a standard BHHS corporate presentation, but the one that I always recommend using is the custom listing presentation. Sorry, I didn't mean to include FSBO there, but this is a little awkward. The custom listing presentation is fabulous. I'll show you a picture of it. The basic corporate one is nice, it's very nice, but the one that the custom presentation is far, far better in my opinion. It was put together by one of the home services company, BHHS Franciscan, the company in San Francisco, and they spent a lot of money on this. And I discovered it about the time we were transitioning to Berkshire Hathaway, and they were gracious enough when I talked to their marketing director to allow us to have it and make use of it. And they supplied it to Toolkit because they use Toolkit too, and Toolkit then modified it, with the information we gave them on Indiana. So it's a great presentation. I'll show you a quick sample of it. But things to look at also on this page when you're sort of setting things up. When you open up one of these things, the listing presentation in this case, it will list all the different pages. So get in, look at the demo, and look at these things and decide which pages you want to include and which pages you want to leave out. There's some things that obviously apply to markets that are different from ours. We should perhaps take those out ourselves so you don't have to fool with that. But go in and learn and look at all the pages that are in there. And again, you can check out a demonstration of this that really actually downloads a PDF that you can then take a look at. So here is just a screenshot of the cover sheet for the custom listing presentation. And again, as you can see, I think this looks really professional. It makes a good use of the Cabernet color, and it's got your picture on there. Ideally, typically, you would put a picture of the house that you're going to be proposing on there. Now, how do you do that? If you haven't met them yet and you're preparing this, drive by their house, get your iPhone out and take a picture of it, and then stick it on here. Just the exterior, and put it on there. So if you have a chance to meet with them before you give them the presentation, take a couple of pictures in the house, ideally that look decent and don't have clothes laying all over the place, and use those. But it's a fantastic presentation, and so you'll choose that presentation, and then when you're in here, the next step you'll do is to choose your MLS option. The beauty of this system is that it's MLS integrated, so you can fold in or integrate your CMA right into the presentation. So it looks really professional. So it's not just a printed out thing from your MLS system, which can look okay, but this is part of your presentation. Now, what I typically do is when I've set this up, I send them a PDF from which I have not included the CMA, because I haven't seen the house yet. I usually send this to them before I go out and even meet with them the first time. So I send it without this the first time, and then I do the MLS and then take it, usually a paper copy, and then send them a follow-up that's got it in there in an electronic way. This thing can be 80 or 90 pages long, so that's why I don't advise printing out any presentation these days. Print out the CMA. People like to have that, and you can circle numbers and this kind of thing. So you'll go in, you'll set up your MLS option, get in and play with it, and if you run into trouble, your manager or Michael or I can help you, figure that out. But get in, and the key is get in and play with it and practice with it and learn how to use it. Make mistakes when you haven't got 2 hours before you go meet with somebody. So get used to it. It's got a criteria search for your MLS system, just like the MLSs that you use. I say just like, it's not nearly as robust. So if you've got somebody with a really unique home, this may not cover all the factors that you might need to put in there, but it covers, for the most part, pretty much everything that you'll need to know. And then it prints out, here's just a summary. You can see it fits right in with the header and everything like that for the home selling proposal, and it's from us. It's not anything that's got your MLS number or name or anything on like it. One of the options you can choose then is you can show like 2 pages for each individual house with the pictures and the photographs and all the information and everything like that. Or you can do a 1-page summary. There's different ways you can show them, but the bottom line, and I find this easier to use than our BLC system here. So it gives you a very professional approach to doing a CMA. You know the other agents, if there's a competition, are going to be using a CMA, and yours is going to look better. And believe me, psychologically, subconsciously, that can make a little bit of a difference if yours has a much more professional appearance to it. So the summary here, as you can see, doesn't include days on the market, doesn't include list to sale, doesn't include some of those details. So that's information you'll need to make sure you have, and you can then sort of spout that, from memory, or if you've got it on your iPad or whatever, as you walk through these, showing your knowledge, not just reading something. So a great tool for us to use. Get in, figure it out, get in practice, ask questions, ask me, ask Michael, ask your manager. Glad to help you out anytime. It's a fabulous, fabulous tool. So you've won the listing. We're just going to finish up here now. A couple of top tips for client service once you've got that listing. Silence is deadly. We already talked about that, but I'm going to be in touch with you on a regular basis. One of our agents famously does Touch Base Tuesdays, and make a time, whether it's Tuesdays, Wednesdays, whatever day it might be, every day the same, every week the same day, that you're going to spend 2 hours or 1 hour or whatever, calling all of your current clients, your buyer clients, your seller clients, no matter how active they are or are not, and touch base. Keep in mind that frequency leads to brevity. When you're touching base on a regular basis, weekly, you don't have to talk about, 4 weeks ago, this, so it was 5 weeks ago or whatever. You've just remember last week we talked about this sold, whatever. It's much more brief. Plus, keep in mind that an outbound call typically takes a couple of minutes. An inbound call from a client, especially when that client feels they have to call you. If a client has to call you and you've got a listing or something like that, generally that may not be a good thing. Now, if it's a buyer client, they're calling because they just drove by a house and they'd like to go see it, that's fine. But with a listing, if a seller has to call you, that's probably not a good thing. Bottom line, though, that inbound calls from clients usually take longer than outbound. Whether it's really 2 and 20, that's what we say in Peak Producers, that inbound call takes 20 minutes, outbound call only takes 2 minutes. Think how effective. We talk about habits, disciplines, and making use of your time. Think about how effective that makes you. Plus, you're making these calls when you're ready to make those calls. And yes, you may get a return phone call, but you're doing them when you're in that mode, not being interrupted by an inbound call. And when you do, after you've made those calls, you left a message for a client, and you're out showing house with somebody, you get a call from that client that you left a message for, call me if you have any questions. It's probably not an emergency. You can keep showing houses for a few hours. Maybe you text them and say, in an appointment, we'll call at 4 or whatever, but you don't have to take that call, that inbound call, unless you're then back in calling mode. So you can control your time, control your disciplines, make the best use of it. So consistent communication gives the client more to talk about when they refer you. Think about that. Go to church, go to a party, go to a ball game, talking to somebody. Hey, your house just went on the market. How's it going? This is great. David is fantastic. He calls us every week. Jane calls us, Texas comes by. She's taken us to coffee twice, and really keeps us up to date. This person is unlike any other realtor I've ever heard about. Do you think that helps when somebody's thinking, I'm thinking about buying my house. This person sounds, selling a house. Do you think that puts you up a notch or two right away? Boom. So you're not only serving your client very, very well in developing long-term relationships, but you are raising the bar on the possibility of you getting more and more referrals and repeat business. So regular market updates also prepare for that dreaded price reduction conversation. We all hate those. Sellers hate them more than we do probably, but chances are you may need to get to that. So regular market updates, instead of waiting until the house has been on the market for 35 days and you haven't talked to them, and there have only been 2 showings, and you haven't talked to them even to give them the feedback because you sent it to them by email. That's a tougher conversation when it's time to lower the price. If you talk to them weekly, here's a house that sold better, it's priced $10,000 lower than yours. It was priced the same as yours when it went on the market, and they lowered the price $10,000 and it sold the next day. I think it's time to lower the price. It helps you with that very, very difficult conversation that we all oftentimes need to have with our clients. So hopefully this is all good stuff. Focused on the CMA and working with listing clients and sellers, and all in the context of setting that relationship building approach to dealing with people and serving your business and making your business grow over time and be more steady, so you can be prepared to walk away if and when you ever need to do that. Hopefully you don't, but it can happen. So, summarizing things, putting it all together, the skill of using a highly professional and impressive knowledge-based CMA. And again, keep in mind that the price of the house is usually the most important thing that the seller has in mind that they want to know about. So the more impressive yours can be, the more knowledge-based, and in this whole context that you set that in, and doing it last helps you set that context. That with the habit of implementing and leveraging your market analysis is just what I was saying, that it's part of an overall package for you, not just, well, here's the price, but it's a whole package of relationship for you. It's going to help you know that you stand on a solid platform of winning more listings and growing your business while making your life easier, because it's going to allow you to, if needed, be able to walk away if need be and not work with clients you don't want to work with, and build the relationship and build the consistency of referrals so you've got a solid business going forward all the time. So, the art of the CMA, preparing, presenting, and winning. Hopefully this is helpful stuff. Now again, we've not gone into detail on this and actually helped you put one together. As newer agents, do sit down with your mentor, your manager, your coach, and say, would you spend some time? I've given this a shot here to start. Am I on the right track? Here's what I'm thinking. And practice, do them. If there's a listing with an agent that in your office has that you want to kind of look at and you wonder, and maybe you've previewed it and you wonder how they came up with the price, go ask them. I've just tried to put together a CMA, and can you help me with the pricing on this? Most agents are more than happy. Obviously, you don't interrupt them in the middle of negotiating a contract, but most of us are happy to share information on what we've done, how we've done it, and that kind of thing. So let's see if there's any chats out there. No chats. So, all right. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll complete the recording, and we'll make this available to everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.